on-chain. Rad TV is all you need. Web3 power, we're in the lead. Stream pass, NFT premium unlocked. Rad TV, we're never gonna stop.
All right, I just scrolled your timeline a little bit. I did it earlier and did tons of research, but I just saw this post from you, Supriyo, that says, so vibe-coded software is slopware, and I laughed so hard. Oh, it's really good. Good morning. How are you?
Morning. Well, I mean, there is truth to that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the vibe coding conversation didn't last too long. It was like a hot week or so.
Well, yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I feel software is going to be moving in that direction, very similar to content. But, the baseline is going to be saturated, and that's what slop is.
Absolutely. So I just want to say thank you again for your time today. Good morning, everyone. We are on another episode of NFTV, Season 3, Episode 13. And today we sit down with the founder of Atrium Art, Supriyo Roy. I am saying that correctly, my king? Yes?
That is correct.
Awesome. Seasoned product designer, creative technologist, great at UX design, a passion for that. Had significant tech roles at several companies, including Flipkart, Amazon, specifically with Alexa Smart Home, and Klaviyo, I think is how that was pronounced. Yep. And it looks like, you've been in the Web3 space for some time. Definite leader here. We have loved everything Atrium is doing. The Nouns movie is fantastic, and we're going to cover all of this. So I've got a ton of questions for you. Very excited to speak with you today. Good morning. Happy Friday. How are you today?
Happy Friday. Doing really well.
Great. Where in the world are you, King?
I am in Pacific Northwest.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. I am in Columbus, Ohio, and great to be connected with you. I spent the last couple days catching up on everything Atrium. It's hard to keep up with everything everybody's doing, but you guys are absolutely crushing it. So if anybody's gonna click through to Rad TV, we've got an Atrium animation channel live on Rad. It's top of our profile right now, as well as here on the Jumbotron in this X space. You can swipe through and see there The Rise of Blues, a Nouns movie, and you can see some behind the scenes footage as well from their Nouns movie account, and you can check out all of their content at YouTube as well. I'll link to that here shortly when I get a second. But you guys are, so I went through your main YouTube page. You've got about 25 videos that are long form content, but you guys are pumping out the shorts. Can you tell us what your current content strategy is? Give us a little update on where you currently are, and then we'll dive into a little bit of your past.
Yeah, I think when you look at content now, increasingly more and more content is being consumed on form factors which are not television and desktop, right? So that's part of the reason why we focused on optimizing our pipeline for lower cost, but also extremely high speed and keeping up with production grade quality of releases. And when you look at the kind of shorts you see on Atrium channel, those shorts are actually from one of the in-house IPs we represent, which is Quack and Lola. And Quack and Lola, if you go and check their footprint elsewhere, like Instagram and TikTok and other places, Quack and Lola are basically one of the top 15 animation IPs on the entire platform in Instagram.
That's amazing. I mean, it's incredible content. You guys are making music videos. There's a Spotify channel. I mean, you guys are really covering all the bases, and it's kind of, shocking might not be the right word, but to see such a large amount of content is kind of shocking. You guys are really pumping it out. I think unlike any other content producers and animation studios. Is that how you feel as well, looking at the space?
I would definitely say that there are a lot of other pioneers within the Web3 space who have been doing similar things. Like you can look at, obviously the usual stewards like Azuki team and like
Sure,
Pudgy
sure.
Penguins and Kleiner Shots and everybody else. But the general core playbook there is very similar, that you meet your fans where they are, right? So we know that we are in a hotspot of crypto know-how, and everybody knows everybody on X, right? But that's not where a lot of like our audience would be. So our audience are on a completely different social graph, looking at TikTok, Instagram, other places, and that's where we started to focus on the content.
Yeah, I mean, TikTok is as hot as it gets right now. It seems like that's where everybody is. TikTok and YouTube Shorts crushing. I mean, the content you guys are making is fantastic. So we'll get back to Atrium here in a minute. I'd love to, learn a little bit more about yourself and your background. And during my research, I saw you got your master's in industrial design at the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, and your bachelor's in computer science at West Bengal Institute of Technology. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and maybe how you even found the crypto space? So wherever you want to start, no pressure. If you want to start post college, maybe in your professional career, but wherever you'd like to kick it off, King.
Yeah, I have been in tech space for the last 20 years, and mostly coming from a software engineering background, which sort of always gave me an interesting understanding of solving very digital focused problems, was always interested in consumer. That's why a lot of my previous roles were very consumer facing, at larger companies, smaller companies as well, and user experience too, right? And a lot of my pedigree was designing for the Asia Pacific region, right? Like including India and other places. And that's a kind of audience which is like coming online for the first time. Like we talk about how deep and internet has penetrated worldwide. The worldwide population is 8 billion people. We still have only like 2.5 billion people online
Yeah,
on
people
internet.
people don't talk about this often, but yes, I mean
Yeah.
it's the most of the world is still not on the internet, and I talk about this regularly in my friends groups. Of every asset on the internet has to be insanely mispriced if we're missing out on like 75% of humanity's idea on what these markets and free markets should be priced at, and that goes from the world's largest assets all the way down to AI content generation. And it's these emerging markets are very exciting. What was your first foray into your professional career? Where did you start?
Well, I started with some of the initial, startup companies, trying to focus within the music industry context, and then worked with Microsoft for a very short time, and like after that, moved on to Amazon.
Very cool. Yeah. So you were in UX and design. Is that something you were passionate about, or something you fell
That
into?
was, yeah, that definitely was something we are passionate about. I feel that this is something also a very prevalent problem in Web3. Generally, majority of the experience are extremely poorly designed. And when we talk about,
Yes.
like adoption, when we talk about like how confusing our lingo is and how we
Yeah.
communicate with people, like an average consumer does not care about like ownership and privacy and decentralization as like ethos, right? But that is by design of how that internet culture has been shaped. If you want to make a dent fundamentally in how people perceive and think and value certain things, you have to change it, like how you communicate with your people, how you communicate, where you don't term your user as a consumer, but are they, like an equal stakeholder in that sense, right, within the platform and things around it, right? So it's all part of the user experience domain. I'm not like underplaying engineering. Obviously, like we are trying to all solve very hard engineering problems too, but this is something which is an equal stakeholder at the discussion table, right? So
Right.
that's where my passion came from in UX. I felt that because of my very engineering centric and like design centric background, when we ventured into Atrium and NFT space, we felt very uniquely equipped to look at animation and production just as a completely different concept because we didn't have any baggage from Hollywood.
Absolutely. So you founded Atrium in 2021. When did your
Yes,
crypto journey begin personally? When did
2018.
2018? Okay. And how did that what sparked it for you?
It just new technologies. Always have been very interested in exploring different technologies, how that affect our lives. Like, and when now, like recently, as like the world is going more and more increasingly AI, we have been exploring that as well, right? So you have to stay ahead of the curve if you really want to tap into processes which just makes your life better.
Absolutely. Our CEO Tony is here who connected you and I. Good morning, King Tony. And something I've been at Rad now for going on 5 years, and he's always talking about skating to the puck where the puck will be. And I give him credit publicly all the time. There have been many times where he's like, "No, these things are going to happen in a couple years," and they have, and it's really difficult to see like the way these things converge. But coming from the background of VR, and now we're
Right.
landing in the world of where it's kind of AI and VR and content creation and AI are all converging on this same space. And I have a bunch of AI questions that we'll get to for you later that I'm very interested in how you guys are pursuing that and looking at that both as like a threats, like a SWOT analysis of like what are the threats there for you and what are the opportunities. So we'll get there. So I would love to know, what was your content background like? As what sparked the idea for Atrium is where we should go, and the love of content creation and animation.
Yeah. Well, the idea there was that we looked at NFTs as an interesting way to represent IP and the IP class. And when like it really started to take off, you saw, like the birth of Yuga Labs, you saw the acquisition of CryptoPunks, and you kind of realized that a very different kind of capital was at play, and you could create uh, fundamentally interesting entertainment franchises which is running on crypto rails, right? And the idea there was to not invent net new systems, but play nice with the systems that are already there so that your growth is sort of supercharged instead of relying on changing or like basically headbutting with the incumbents, right?
Right.
Um, and what we figured was that there was this massive um, cottage industry almost today of independent like animators and storytellers who don't have the means of a large studio, but they are kind of stuck in that system because of how it's stacked against them. And the only way they could basically keep working on productions is if they get absorbed by a studio, work through contracts, which doesn't actually flow the money upside when a franchise becomes successful, things like that. And we figured that, oh, like what if there was a different way where we could become this dynamic sort of representation for this group of people, where if you are a writer and you don't necessarily have the animation skills, but if you are a great animator but you can't write great stories, you technically could get paired up, and you wouldn't have to like spend time finding each other. You would find each other through this like collective umbrella, and you could look at Atrium as being able to put together very independent um, production crews essentially on the fly, and create like content which could rival Pixar. And like
You absolutely are.
you don't have to take my word for it. It's out there.
It's out there. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So those that aren't familiar with Atrium, Atrium has over 100, correct me if I say anything wrong here, but over 100 creatives,
Yes.
including professionals from Pixar, Marvel, Netflix, and you guys have everything in-house. So if you're missing a key component of your production or need help in one area, Atrium can solve that for you, connect those dots, complete the circle. And very interested to know, how did you assemble this team of creative Avengers, if you will? How does that come
Well, it
together?
it was from the moment of finding our first Captain America, right? The first recruit. And yeah, that was 3D Print guy. He is our creative director, also our first non-engineering hire, who we
Very
brought on
cool.
board around, like 3 years ago, so same time Atrium was founded. He comes from a 25 years stint at Pixar, and that was his only other stint beyond Atrium. He has been one of those artists behind like really hit places like the movie Up, right? So you have definitely seen his work up until now, from all of his like past history. He was also someone who was really interested in coming up with a very different kind of production rails, something which enables people to go independent, but like retain autonomy, retain that kind of like financial security, which a larger studio could provide. And yeah, like that's what Atrium ended up being. On Atrium today, I think one of the ways we stand out is not just how we curate artists. Like Atrium is not permissionless in that sense that you can't just sign up, right, and become an artist on Atrium. Like you have to go through um, basically an invite-based, review-based model, which makes sense in a sense that we are very committed to keeping only the highest caliber individuals and keep our bar really, really high. But when we do onboard people, we make sure that as a platform, we have a responsibility towards bringing that upside to them when they get involved, right? So that's part of the reason why when someone like 3D Print guy was brought on board, like his peers were interested and their peers were interested, right? And that's how the network grew.
Very cool. So I'm wondering, you come into the space, and we've been here watching the whole time as well, and we saw, the early projects that were doing animated series, and a lot of them. Um, it's difficult to talk about this because you feel like you're saying negative things, but it's just the state of it. So anyone that's offended, it's not intentional. That I'm not trying
It's
to
fine.
offend anyone,
It's fine.
but like, that you watch them come in, do their profile picture drop, they raised a couple $1,000,000 or several 100,000.
Right.
They blow through their budget, and that's the end. Now, next they've got to make another profile pic or find some other liquidity to keep the project running. I'm interested to know how Atrium approached that friction, that difficult part of the decision making on who you would partner with, and where that right fitting happened, because there is so much questionable energy, unclear dynamics, teams that aren't fully doxed. How do you find the right team to work with and like really take those first couple steps as Atrium Animation Studios to work with a team that gets it and is legitimate and is really has the knowledge and expertise to deliver the type of content you all have been?
Right. Yeah. I think like at its like simplest format, like we obviously vet through all the inbounds we get, and there is a very strong word of mouth. So whenever we have worked with a certain kind of project, like they become our champion, right? Like they recommend us to the other people who work with. And Web3 is a pretty small industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody knows everybody, and that essentially helps us weed out bad actors
Sure,
in that sense.
sure.
And like Atrium's focus, while we started off with only working with crypto IPs, we have grown to like have a more balanced outcome where now we are working with like traditional brands as well, just like any other like animation house would. And I think one of the interesting pitches almost always has been that you will not be able to beat the price Atrium could get something done at,
That's amazing.
with the kind of quality bar we try to sustain for, right? Like, so this, a fun fact, the movie Flow, right? Like, was the star child of this year in animation. Flow was made on a budget of like 3.7, $3.8 million. And Nouns movie today has a budget of 2.7. And if you look at animation productions of similar runtime, like 90 minutes to 100 minutes, you typically look at upwards of $10 to $12 million in like production budgets alone.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's that $10,000 a minute's the number we were throwing around for a while. I haven't done that math, and I'm not smart enough to do the fast math that you just spit out. But it definitely is incredibly expensive. So that's one of the questions I have is, how are you guys looking at Atrium Studios? Are you looking at it as a faster, more efficient with the similar production techniques? And how are you guys actually delivering that in an industry that's, we can say AI video all day long, and we'll get into that later, but I feel personally that AI video, at least to the consumer facing products today, they are not efficient enough to say
No,
you're
yeah, they're
opening up
not.
Atrium. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would be very, like, never say never, right? Like we
Not
were
never.
not
Yeah,
so long,
absolutely.
yeah,
Sure.
not so long ago where
Yeah, it
where
was
we had like,
slop. Yeah, it was
yeah,
Will Smith,
flops,
whatever.
right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, the slop is getting better, but I definitely do not see an entire production pipeline end to end replaced by AI. What we internally say is that AI is probably going to be your co-partner, like a production manager, right? Like, so in that sense, you would be able to delegate off a lot of like very grunt work or like things which are extremely resource intensive but not very high ROI in terms of effort invested, and that you basically would be able to delegate off to AI tools. But your high level direction, high level storytelling, all of those things still lie with you, right? So that's one aspect to it. Another aspect is, as you pointed it out, in long form storytelling, consistency and preserving context is extremely important. You can't say, oh, this is going to disrupt cinema if you can't even like keep the color of your shirt consistent or your hair consistent through through
Of
different
course.
frames,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's funny. So in that sense, I would look at like the current state of AI filmmaking like being very much like a hobby cottage industry. It is going to change as like the tools get way more sophisticated, but we are nowhere near that at the moment.
Right. Right. So, I mean, obviously, you guys are working with the highest level animators and people that have been doing this for, like you said, your first hire was at Pixar for 25 years, and that was the only thing he had done previously. So, his entire experience is at the highest level of animation, and then he shifts into Atrium. And your guys' first collaboration was with the Nouns DAO, which anybody in crypto is familiar with. If you're not, I don't know where you've been, but go do some research. And to produce the first animated film and feature length. This is 30 minutes long, funded by a DAO, and it's incredible. It's pinned. The full 30 minutes is pinned from the Nouns movie account at the top of the space, and it's linked on Rad TV as well. If you want a highest quality video and no ads, it's available on every device with Rad TV. And would love to know more about this project. I have a bunch of questions I kind of want to ask about this, but it's more, I would love to hear, where did this spark and anything you can give, and that'll kind of change my perspective on how we approach it.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things you can think about is Nouns had been a perfect candidate because they are a public domain art project. So anybody could work with Nouns and they're permissionless. And Nouns Capital is entirely internet formed, right? So when we talk about like internet capital, like that's what internet capital actually is. Most of the NounsDAO revenue today comes from NounsDAO auctions. Auctions go into a treasury, and the treasury is collectively deciding how do they want to deploy that capital, right? And when we came in, we pitched a very radical concept where we mentioned that, hey, we want to make a feature-length film underlying Nouns IP. We would take a completely unique spin at it, and it's going to be a directorial debut of the directors. And we shared their credentials, and we mentioned that you don't have to greenlight the entire movie. You can greenlight it on the go. So we are going to split up the movie in 9 consecutive acts, and each time an act is released, you can decide whether you want to forward the story or you want to cut the funding, and we would be fine with it, right? So that de-risked it in terms of execution, where Nouns
Beautiful
wasn't
model.
committing for the entire production, but was basically keeping us on the hook to keep delivering. And we took a very open approach in producing in public. So you can see a lot of our production, sort of like interviews and clips and things like that on our socials. And the only pieces which you are seeing right now, like including the ones on Rad and YouTube, is only 3 episodes, which are basically 30 minutes long, are available to see publicly, and the remaining 2/3 of the movie is going to be like accessible through distribution channels. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Awesome. Is that already in the can?
I can't talk too much about it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, talk too much about it, but yeah, that has been always the goal, that we don't need other people to come in for funding it. It's being funded by very different group of patrons. What we do need, though, is cast a really wide net so that we ensure a good story is seen by as many people as possible.
Sure, we'd love to be a part of that distribution model when it's ready to go. We'd love to chat about that whenever you're ready. So, talk about the funding models. You guys are a pretty innovative funding model, and the internet capital markets is kind of just starting to hit
Right.
the public tongue and lexicon. I mean, really, just the past 30 days, people have started saying that term, mainly because the ICM on Solana gaining value and recognition in the space. So you guys have been here for years, talking about this for years, doing this for years, using the term internet capital. So how did you start that shift? And was that something that just resonated with the community and they got it? The DAO of Nouns understood that right away, and it just naturally flowed into the Atrium relationship, and you guys were off to the races? Or was there some convincing or communication that needed to take place in order to get this over the line and get that capital flowing? Oh, we lost him. Well, wait a minute. Good morning, everyone. Oh, there he is. He's back. Supriyo.
I'm back. I'm back. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I got
That's okay.
cut. But yeah, yeah. I think Jen, I got the question.
Okay,
so I think
cool.
I have to,
Thank you.
answer. I think we always thought that you don't need to rely on speculation to essentially enable like capital flows, right? So that's something which we saw with the first wave of like NFT companies and like raises and things around it, and then we are seeing that with meme coins, right? So
Of
the
course.
initially the idea there was everybody is making the next Disney killer, right? So you see these fundraisers and PFP collections, but they essentially are a promise to build something, and a group of patrons come together, kind of like contributing to a Kickstarter, and like be part of this community who essentially is undertaking that challenge, right? Majority didn't succeed, but the ones who did definitely feel very life changing for a lot of those community members, like whether you talk about like apes with like bored apes,
Sure.
or like Kazookies and things like that, right? With Atrium, we never issued a token. We don't have an NFT collection, right? So we were pure play, a community driven kind of like platform where we took a very active role as curators to make sure that we can pair up that capital with the right kind of talent and make production happen. Most of the IPs and the companies who are operating out there today, they don't have the kind of production capabilities we have, but they do have capital. So that's where like it feels like a win-win situation. If you sort of look at some of our existing lineup, like 130 plus artists in the network, we have paid out over $5 million till date to artists through productions, right? So that's not like trivial.
No,
And
no, not at all. That's
yeah,
amazing. It's incredible.
and essentially like a lot of that is were able to sustain a longer period of time, like making like actual money, utilizing and being part of the Atrium ecosystem. And what we have been trying to do is we have been trying to take an approach where we don't push out production releases and just plaster it with Atrium branding, where we just say that, hey, X studio production, we always highlight and celebrate the artists involved in that. So the real faces who have been part of a certain production.
Absolutely. And if anybody listening, go to their YouTube channel. I'll pin it in just a second. I'll pin it up there as soon as I quit talking and Supriyo starts talking again. I'll pin it. But they have incredible lineup of interviews with musicians, sound effects teams, voiceover actors. Incredible behind the scenes content. Is definitely worth checking out. So, you are mentioning storytelling. You even brought up meme coins, which I love that you connected that dot there, because I think that most people miss the storytelling and community building that goes on with meme coins, and they look at it as it's almost like the slop energy applied to tokenization, and it's the same thing of like, oh, we don't need this slop or whatever it is. But if you look a little deeper and get into those communities, you really see that there is some real connection that is deeper than the internet. I mean, most of my best friends I've met through Bitcoin and tokens and meme coins and things, and we're friends in real life. Like godfather to my son, I met through Bitcoin, and we didn't meet for 4 years, and he's number one man in my life. And so, you're talking about storytelling, community storytelling. I'm interested. How are you approaching that? Where we are at a time where the internet is so well connected. Our backgrounds are so diverse. Our cultures are so different. How do you view that storytelling coming together where it resonates with the largest group of people without offending others, or telling the stories in that right thread that it perfectly threads the needle to where it's a community-based collaboration that feels good and the energy's correct, as opposed to fighting the frictions that could come with that?
Right. Yeah. I feel this was validated early years with Atrium too. Like I feel a lot of the teams or like approach gets stuck in this collaborative storytelling aspects. Majority of us are not good storytellers.
Yeah,
so,
no, we're not.
so,
Most of us are
so
not at
the
all.
moment you crowd source storytelling, it ends up becoming a tragedy of the commons, right?
Yes. Yep.
So what you do need to do is you would need to guide it and curate that storytelling if you really want to, like have your fans or like community as stakeholders and sort of take a more active role in developing a certain type of story. You give them the rails, guiding rails of how that story could be shaped up, right? So it's not like free flowing canvas, but you define the setup, you define certain, like guiding posts, which people can then create better with. That's one of the aspects to it. Another aspect, like around like meme coins or NFTs in general. End of the day, everything is a token and it's a representation of something, correct? And you are rallying around a certain type of IP, which is represented by that token. What we have seen like lately is NFTs are great in, like the way they bootstrapped the concept of 1,000 true fans. Now we kind of like went to the magical number of 10,000 true fans, but that was never going to, like explode where you have a second wave of fans who are not essentially that vested because they don't have exposure to those assets. That's where something like a meme coin or a fungible coin comes in, where suddenly it's a lot more equitable. It can be very much diversified depending on how big your sort of operating surface is. Like it could be for everyone, for someone who is just buying $1 worth of coin to, like be part of something, or someone who really wants to make a big bet and they go in for 5 figures, right?
Sure. Sure.
And yeah, and that's generally like how I see that meme coins have essentially an edge on being more liquid and being more wider casting in terms of coordination, community formation, capital formation, all those things.
All those. I mean, totally. And something we talk about regularly at RAD that really has driven our focus and our product design is that being in the Western world and from very developed countries, we are so rich we can't even really fathom what the rest of the world is enduring most of the time. And I often bring up the average daily earnings for the world globally is around $7.50. It fluctuates pretty heavy, but it's under $10.
Yes.
And that is I think what you just alluded to, with the meme coins is a lot of times it's, hey, it's going to be $100,000 to get into this venture. And there goes 99.9999% of people. But if you do have internet capital markets and you're raising money via meme coin, $100 or $15 or $20 may be significant play to somebody. And that's where they're able to enter the market. And that being able to access that capital and that liquidity, it's undeniable. That's kind of how we jumped off this conversation of how many people are on the internet, and we're saying NVIDIA is worth how much? There's a lot of devices that still have to come online. There's a lot of Apple's products that still need to be sold. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built out. And these things are all value. They all derive an additional value one way or the other. So it's to minimize that or disrespect that from any nook of the world is disrespectful to human beings, I feel. And like we're kind of at this place of empowering individuals. I'm interested, you're approaching this from a design perspective. And as you just talked about that, I kind of hear in your voice that you're looking at this, you're coming at this from a design perspective. You're looking at solving this problem of the storytelling and content production from design. Am I assuming that, or is that really how you're looking at this?
I would say that that's generally how we are looking at it. We are basically looking at sort of solving that capital pairing, capital formation problem a little differently,
Right.
and
That's what
where
I heard. Yeah.
yeah, and where we could potentially see that, oh, this is a better way. This could be a better form of how like these productions are approached in a world of AI, right? So that's generally how I have been thinking about it. I also feel that, like, I think fundraising through meme coins, or fundraising through like fundraising and capital formation, is one of the big hero use cases of crypto as an industry. But we also have to be very cognizant of the kind of repercussions it also has, right? Like, and when I say repercussions, you essentially do not want to go do launch a meme coin just because you can, right? Because there are basically double-edged sword scenarios where for every trade that happens either on a speculation or like intentional or non-intentional, there is a winner and a loser, right? So the the person who is on the other side of the trade essentially just got harmed by somebody else, right? So you
Sure.
basically would want to work in an environment, or at least like build towards an environment which is like more win-win for everybody than being a PvP where you end up being in house.
Yeah. So, I'm interested to know. Tony comes from a long time. Our CEO, who's here in the space. If you guys aren't following him, go follow him. He long time video professional, and he knows everything from making players and encodings. And I don't even know. I don't know the full lexicon of things that he would say. Like he cut his teeth on. But it sounds to me like you're coming at this from a couple different angles, but both design oriented. And I'm interested to know, do you feel like it's product and more streamlined UXs that get this over the line and make these things happen? Or is it more streamlined? Is it like designing the lexicon and expectations so that the outcomes are more clear? And I mentioned Tony because he always talks about none of us using the internet know what HTTPS is or any of these
Mhm.
internet protocols, but we use them every day. They're ingrained into our lives in ways most
Yeah.
of us will never know. Is that how you're approaching this? Is we want to deliver these pieces or products that eliminate those difficult lexicons and the friction of onboarding a normal
Yeah,
person?
I would say so. I think, like, in crypto, like Web3 crypto, right? Like, it doesn't matter. We have this weird obsession of solving problems with non-existent users, right? So we basically build systems and build rails which we think are going to be like different and make a difference for the consumer without actually validating that thesis. And that's why we have a like slew of software products out there today with very little usage, right? And like that circle back to the point of adaptation, like adoption, right? So I think one of the things which we have been thinking about is that if you are really planning on building rails and infrastructure, like basically picks and shovels, you need your killer IP. You need your killer application, which is built on top of that. And that is basically how you would attract people to try this new thing. And hopefully, once they come in and try this new thing, that's when they feel that, oh, like, and see and realize that this is like hopefully a better approach. And then some of them stay and some of them don't. And
Right.
that's generally how you would build towards like slowly bringing people on board. You can't, like, the building of a system and then hoping people will come just doesn't work.
True. So I'm interested to know what you've released some amazing works. I was blown away. I even went and told our team, you guys have uploaded, and it might be more now, but I think I counted the other day on your shorts on YouTube, it was like 174 shorts
Yes.
that you guys are putting out weekly,
Mhm.
I think, which is incredible. So my question right now is I'm interested to know what the feedback is post all of this content being put out. And something my crypto friends say is like delivering is the worst thing you can do in Web3 because then there's no expectations anymore. There's no hype. There's no momentum left to carry the value of the NFT or whatever thing is they're trying to pump at the moment. I'm interested to know what
We
the
don't have an NFT,
I know,
right?
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why let me finish here. So I'm interested to know what your community feedback has been since you're delivering this content that is Web3 crypto based in some aspects. I know you have additional IP as well that is not tied to Web3, but since you are doing community storytelling and you're involving a DAO and things like that, what is the feedback post that content being delivered? And I'll preface it with, we can't make everybody happy. You can't use everybody's ideas. Is it some people are really angry that their idea wasn't used and others are really happy, or is it pretty much
No,
we're happy to see this?
yeah, it's definitely not like that. Like especially in context of Nouns movie, what we made sure that we aren't sourcing ideas. Like we are not asking you to, like, oh, submit the next script and we would probably make something out of it. No, we what we went through was assembling a core team around it, which does what it does best, like write great stories and produce it. And we made sure that we hold ourselves accountable to communication and like making sure that we are basically keeping everybody posted across the board, right? And the production is sometimes slow and it's complex, so you wouldn't expect like a daily revolutionary update every time, but you can be sure that you are seeing transit like very real progress month over month. That's one aspect of it. Like at Atrium, generally we believe that great story should be a great story. Like it shouldn't
I shouldn't have
matter.
to tell another story to
Yeah,
make this
yeah.
story great.
Yeah, it
Yeah, yeah,
shouldn't it
sure.
shouldn't matter where it's coming from. It shouldn't matter that it's
Right.
like crypto defined or like the origin of it all. So what we have been surprised by generally is when you don't talk about it, and if the story has to stand on its own merit, then that's all people talk about. Like they don't care where it comes from.
Incredible. I love hearing that. And that's something, we've seen talking about the raising money with NFTs or whatever. People really don't understand until they get into the business of content production how hit driven this industry is. And most people aren't aware of how many things are canceled or shelved or,
Yes.
put off. And that doesn't mean that they're not hits. They might be incredible, but they're still getting shelved for whatever reason. And even things that some people do think are hits. You hear about people complaining all the time of my favorite show was canceled. Well, it didn't make the right people happy in whatever way, and now it's canceled. And this is where we're excited about the potential of AI to deliver more ideas efficiently to where we can get more stories out, more IP out, more content out. So, that being said, I am really interested to get into some more futuristic stuff of where Atrium is headed, how you guys continue to plan to work with artists all over the world. And that's something that's interesting to me, just initially off of the Nouns product. You guys, I just pinned to the Megatron, anybody who's in here, I had pinned the YouTube link to Atrium Animation's YouTube that has their behind the scenes interviews from the people that helped produce the Nouns DAO. And the one I linked was, make sure I get his, who was it? His sorry, it auto played over, so I got to go back one. It was it was Jacob Petrus who did the music, and it's an excellent interview and a bunch of behind the scenes stuff over there. Go check it out. So, that being said, how are you guys doing these remote productions? Can you give any insight on the way you're managing them and the way you're combining these groups of people from all over the world in order to make these incredible productions that are taking place outside of the traditional flow of Hollywood in a studio? How are you guys managing that?
Well, you just have to work with people who are self-starters. So I think one of the
So
core
you made it sound so easy, Supriyo.
one of the core things we do is we very early on instilled a process which are used by remote engineering teams. So that's where my experience sort of came handy. That if you were to approach this as a tech org, how would you structure the org, right? So we have production teams or production like groups who essentially are working on one single work stream. They are not being pulled apart in between like different concepts or stages. So they are self-contained and they are responsible on executing on that particular work stream, right? So the Nouns movie team is only working on that. They are not multitasking on everything else. And on top of that, we would have like project coordinators, production coordinators who are like running dailies. They are talking to concept artists, voice actors, like scheduling all of those like operational logistics things around things, and also keeping up with the timelines so that we are aware of the general progress based on our production milestones we have internally.
So it sounds like the leadership mentality is like no laziness allowed. Self
Yeah.
starters. Anytime you got to nip that immediately. What other top level like leadership philosophies do you think are important to managing remote work at this magnitude?
Over communicate and use all the tools at
Amen.
your disposal. I think one of the things which is important in this case is that we rely heavily on the tools and then the discipline to actually follow through, right? So we have a workflow around like sharing designs. We have a workflow around meeting up with, say, the writer's room. We have the workflow around hand over assets into that goes into a production pipeline. So all of those things, once they are defined, people are expected to follow that to a T. And then, like once you go over that a couple times, like it becomes second nature.
Absolutely.
And it's not very different with even traditional animation studios,
Sure.
right? But
Sure.
they just operate out of a physical space and we don't have that constraint.
Yeah, I mean, any artist, self-starting is pretty important. Any work of creative work, 'cause you got to keep going when nobody cares. You can't.
Yep.
Nobody's there to cheer you on most of the days. I'm
Mhm.
interested to know what infrastructure you feel may be missing from these remote productions that you guys are managing, or even what tools you currently are using that really stand out as like this tool is making it possible or really helping us, and both sides. Maybe something that doesn't exist that you wish exists, and maybe something that does exist that is a great tool in helping you accomplish these remote productions.
I would say like surprisingly things like Discord and Slack are really really cool. Like I could see 20 years ago when they were not a thing, like it was so much harder to coordinate with a large amount of people, right? So that's generally something which is super helpful. Another thing is when you are working on stories, like you have a much stronger sort of path to go and build out your own audience, right? And that's thankfully to possibilities like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, like where you have these like vertical behemoths and like with massive amount of audiences you can tap into. So you are not at the mercy of, like a big production studio to come in and greenlight your stuff and put it on a television, right? So you now can pursue those things very directly yourself. Um, and I think one of the things there I would say would be more important is where like the AI things comes in, is that there is always room for optimization. There is always room to go faster, and that's where a lot of the tools that are coming on board now, we are slowly embedding them into our pipeline. So like some aspects of the job become more faster and become more automated.
Very cool. We got about an hour left. Everyone that's tuning in right now, we have Supriyo Roy, founder of Atrium Art, atrium.art. Website URL, an award-winning global roster of artists, over 130 artists currently from Netflix, Marvel, Pixar, and more at your reach, each with their own unique skill set that help you elevate your ideas with their experience. Their first non-engineer hire was at Pixar for 25 years and the only job he had prior to joining Atrium. They've put out a ton of awesome content. Pinned at the top of this space, you can click a couple links to connect with them, follow everything they're doing, and check out some of the awesome content they have posted over the past several years. They've been in the space since 2021 and have absolutely been crushing it. So I'm very excited. We have an hour left, and I'm really just getting into like our real questions here, Supriyo. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us. So you've already launched multiple successful on-chain and traditional railed IPs. I'm wondering what you think the future of like successful IP launched both on chain and off looks like from a merchandising and licensing angle for both storytelling and like IP sales of, t-shirts, whatever else, when it's so community originated and organized and decentralized, coming from something like a DAO. How do you handle that? How do you manage that? Are you guys even in that aspect, or are you letting other projects handle that and you guys are strictly animation?
No, we definitely handle it internally for
Very
all
cool.
the IP we basically do. So defining all the way from like character bibles and like supply chain guidelines, customer experience, like whether it's D2C or working with a third party brand who essentially is working with on a licensing agreement. We have basically oversight into all of those things. One of the things which is important for IP is going to be in age of AI when slop is commoditized, right? Spinning up a new IP is going to be really easy, right? Like, and you would see tons and tons more people getting viral because there are just that many people out there who would be interested in what you are making, right? But when the bottom line gets commoditized, then the gap between a good IP and a not so good one becomes even more wider. So when something like that happens, you really, really want to make sure that you are not creating another like run of the mill thing, which doesn't have enough standing of its own and it doesn't like strive for something, right? Like it's too general purpose. So that's where you have to like find your niche. I think even with like AI agents, we would see very different slew of companies and products which would come out and which would operate in verticals instead of trying to be general purpose horizontal things, which would not do, but we should try to do everything but not do anything well at all, right? So that's generally where I see that going. And then how it impacts IP is when there are tons of like everything is an IP, like if when there are tons of such franchises and IPs that are being born on the internet, the only thing that would matter long term is your audience. So know your audience, like build something where you actually have a strong audience, affinity, and that audience cannot be found on top of a financial speculation, which is why it's so important that you build an audience who are involved and attracted to you for a sense of community, not because they paid for something or because there is some kind of indirect quasi financial incentive aligned, right? So financial incentives aligned is a thing you do at stage 2 once you have found your people, right? So that's generally how I see these things changing in terms of like merchandising and all those like other aspects. Again, same story with like AI. You would see pipelines being very, very much more like robust when it comes to concepting, when it comes to like actually handling production, like but even thinking something as simple as apparel, right? Like you could very easily ideate on apparel concepts, and you can even feed it through like an AI engine to understand cost impact, understand like a general idea of what the minimum order quantity should be for something like this, for it to be commercially viable for you, right? So you can run those kind of like very rapid projection scenarios, and that can be helpful at an strategy level for you to think that, oh, which are the categories I should target now, which are the categories I should rely on other third party partners to sort of execute on.
Excellent answer. And you know, talk about building audiences. That's something we talk about a lot at Rad. We're working with a lot of creators, and a lot of creators come to us to begin building their career, their platform, their foundation, and they're looking, you know, to start growing their audience. Somebody that's made multiple successful IPs and getting the type of viewership you all are. I'm interested to know how you're looking at it. Are you looking at your distribution as the platforms need to be helping you build these audiences, and is that a main driver of why you're distributing in certain places, or do you feel the content and the creator studio is responsible for building out that audience?
I especially think the platform, especially if it's a new platform, platforms have an outsized responsibility there, to actually, you know, build out audience and not rely entirely on the creator to bring their audience, right? Like, so then you as a platform are treating the creator as an acquisition funnel for the platform, right? Like, so then it's not a symbiotic relationship, it's one way. Another thing to think about is that the creators oftentimes could have, you know, like really good pieces of content, right? But if they are not able to stand out of the median, like then it's not good enough. So you have to like be very robust in changing your theory of what works and what doesn't, right? So when we launched some of our IPs, especially on like TikTok and other places, like we looked into data very heavily to understand what was resonating, what wasn't working, and like tweak some of our directions, and then like relearn after we would launch, right? Like a lot of people end up getting stuck in the approach they take, and they don't course correct until it's too late. So that's basically one of the things you would want to approach, especially if you are seeking self distribution through social media reels.
So, you know, talking decentralized media and Web3 distribution, it's still early. We feel we are by far the world's leader. We're the only platform putting Web3 content on every device in the world today, monetized today. Only platform allowing art display for Web3 art on every device today, including PlayStations, Quest, PSVR 2. Something I noticed while doing my research on you all is that you're primarily distributing through traditional social outlets, including YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I'm wondering what you're thinking about decentralized distribution and why you're choosing to distribute primarily through the traditional rails as opposed to distinctly Web3 or whatever else. And, you know, open to all the conversation there. Is it really just the viewership and the amount of people that are on YouTube, and
I would say so. Yes, 100%. I think that has been almost like a non-negotiable testing ground for us, for especially when you are working on a new piece of IP which doesn't have any audience. You go and build it where you have the widest funnel possible, and that's just where YouTube is at the moment, right? So you build that audience out, and the idea there is that you are able to test it out at a really large scale really quickly, and we are not stuck on like trying a certain uh, platform. Like we would definitely be open to trying different outlets, but they would need to meet a certain kind of like scale criteria as we basically work on internally, right? Because if you are not giving the IP a fair shot to reach enough eyeballs, then the other aspects just don't matter. It's like dead on arrival.
Sure. So, how are you guys deciding right now? You mentioned running tests. So, are you testing a lot of IP? And what I would let me start that question over. Where are you sourcing your IP ideas from originally? And then, like, are you hand selecting, like, say, a few out of that basket, do a few tests, and then see how those tests go to see what you're really sinking your teeth into? How does that process go of
Yeah,
selecting the
I
IP
would
to?
say so. I think some of the IPs we work on are all in-house, right? So they are Atrium born, Atrium curated, made everything, right? So we own that IP essentially. Some of the other IPs are collaborations with other people where, like we don't own the IP, somebody else does, but they are coming in and they are saying that, hey, I have a budget, I would give you the budget, you own the production, and then we co-own the properties together, right? So that's another line. And basically what we realized was that even when you launch new IPs, you are looking at anywhere between 6 months to 1 year before you actually have enough data to see if something is working the way it should be, whether it's growing in a sufficient way, and things like that. But after that, you have a pretty clear understanding whether it's worth pushing it further or, like cutting it loose.
Love that. So, I'm wondering, it's very interesting to me that you guys came in so tied to Web3. Did you do any experimentation with selling this content or making it available via Web3 rails or distribution on
Yeah,
any?
not necessarily. I
Mhm.
think like for us, we almost we just almost never felt that majority of the audience is interested in like a pay-per-view kind of model, right? And especially within Web3, because the Web3 audience itself is too small. So there were two different aspects to it. One of them was, how do you overcome the logistical challenge of bringing people on board on crypto, because the rails are very difficult to explain and things like that. And on top of that, you have brand association of crypto itself,
Yeah.
right? There are, yeah, there are both factors to consider there. I think it's just that space is slowly maturing, so eventually it would change. But what we looked at was that the scale just simply wasn't there. Like for instance, could you see a platform, not platform, could you see a production like for Nouns movie, for instance, being able to self-sustain by just selling content? I don't think so, like, because the numbers just don't match up. But you could see that change if the spaces, overall number of people participating in the space as a whole, like goes up 10x or 15x.
Yeah,
So a
sure.
lot of the products are like a little bit ahead of their time in that sense.
We agree. And talking about the payment rails, we see that as a major friction point right now. And something I'm seeing just, commentary on the crypto space in general is MetaMask rolling out their credit card. My friends that have crypto money and been in the space for a long time are like, are you crazy that you think I would pull out a MetaMask card anywhere ever and swipe it in front of human beings? Did you think that's really what I'm going to do? And that is an ideological hurdle that I don't think most people are aware of that really exists. Like, founders are getting kidnapped. There's ransoms. It's becoming increasingly dangerous to go to any events where you're telling people I'm in cryptocurrency and this is what I do for a living. So all those things are playing into that. And we think, there's both the there are developments happening and it is getting better, but we also see on the other hand, there's people entering the space or long time, I won't even mention their names. If anybody who is in the space knows, but there's these new wallets coming out and there's new L2s coming out, and it looks like they are making it more difficult and more convoluted and making the lexicon even more intrusive or difficult to understand because of the similarity of words like a Web3 wallet or a crypto wallet or a mobile wallet and all of these different terms. Then you got to be thinking, where's my ETH? Is it on this chain? Is it on that chain? Is it, and it does become a major problem. So I appreciate that you're talking about that and saying that it's too much for the everyday consumer to come in, and then you really be able to extract the value that this content is obviously extracting now. It's, you guys are getting tons of views, you're getting tons of ad revenue. I'm interested, do you feel that the ad-based model and the traditional big box distribution is still the best model for creators today? And do you believe that's going to continue to dominate until crypto rails?
I know. I think generally the ad model only worked when you had people in the funnel, right? So that goes back to AI slop, right? So if suddenly a network has 100K actual people and 100K bots, do you see that being an equally valuable network to an advertiser? No. So in that sense, what then ends up happening is the audience that is increasingly more and more sparse in these pockets, they become much more valuable, and the direct relationship between a creator and the actual audience is more valuable in that sense, right? So you could see that a creator essentially is utilizing these places with like vast network of like audience building experiences, and then you basically take that audience somewhere else where they can actually monetize through a different rail, right? But it needs to be an experience which is net new and it's just not possible in existing system. If it's just giving an incremental value, you would see like a lot of churn there. And I feel that when the ad money basically becomes less and less valuable because it just doesn't know how to target itself well, you would see that people are going to basically monetize through attention. They are going to monetize through mind share. And that has been part of the early slivers of what you are seeing with the whole meme coin meta thing. Like a lot of the meme coins, you could see were proxies of mind shares, proxies of trends that were happening in like traditional rails, and people found a way to sort of productize and financialize that trend. I'm not sure meme coins are the right vehicle for that, but we probably are like one or two iteration away from that product.
I love that. Talking about the value going down of those ads served. I just saw a stat this morning that Google searches are up 49% year over year, but the click through rate's down 30%. So,
Yeah.
see ya. It's pretty much game over. And we talk regularly now about how AI, even Google is front running their search results with AI responses. So
Right.
you're already below what would be the answer you're searching for, yet you're paying for that spot. It's just tough to, I don't scroll down anymore. I just have it, or I don't even use Google. I go to GPT or wherever else to search initially.
Right.
So let's dive into your guys' tool set. You're talking about, most efficient and faster production with the same highest level content producers that like been at Pixar 25 years.
Yeah.
What tools are those today? Is it less bureaucracy and red tape to cut through the BS that's
I
costing
would say
more?
so. Yeah, I would say so. Definitely there. Like you something which um, can be done by a production team of 50 people doesn't need 150 heads, right? So then you are cutting down production budget, but then eventually at a person level, everybody ends up making more money. So that's one. B is that you empower them by cutting down how that production actually works. So, for example, we use a lot of Unreal Engine in a lot of our animation production, right? So, when something like that happens, we are looking at real time rendering, we are looking at things which people can experiment without going through the entire production pipeline back and forth involving multiple different people. So, you can then look at speed and how fast it ends up becoming. That's one. Another thing is that really leaning on proprietary tools and tools which have a big user generated community, right? Like, so for instance, we actively utilize Blender, right? And Blender is a free software, but what makes Blender stand out is because it's a free software, it has this incredible group of underlying thriving sort of indie scene where people are helping each other out. They have like assets they are trading on. They have a lot of different things which are essentially built on top of open source things, right? That is vastly superior than you going and taking proprietary software from larger conglomerates where you have to pay for every single feature you use. And it may not even be as good as the final output, which is done on Blender.
Right. So you guys, you've been here. You founded in 2021.
Yeah.
Atrium.art is the website
Yeah.
for anybody. Um,
Mhm.
am I remembering correctly that you said you started doing productions in 2023? Is that right, or is it before that?
Oh, yeah. So no. So the we started doing productions in 2021,
Okay.
and most of those productions were very small. They were, like community driven and majorly coming from like individual IP owners, right, who just wanted to work with an artist. And what happens in a different way, form there is as we kept doing it, we started getting involved more and more officially with IPs at ground level, like overarching, right? So now where we are at a point where almost 80 to 85% of whatever animated content you see coming out of crypto is probably high likelihood coming out of Atrium.
What a statement. That is incredible. That's amazing. So I'm interested to know, are you even, we started the conversation saying we'd get into the AI spot, and I have a few questions around that. Are you, are any of your creators utilizing AI, or is Atrium
We yeah
using AI in any of its
yeah
creative
we do
process? Go
we
ahead
do
if you don't mind sharing maybe some of that.
Yeah, so I think majority of that is restricted at a concepting level today. So
Yep.
we utilize it for rapid concepting, whether it's like character explorations or environment, world art, things like that. We also utilize AI for a lot of mundane tasks. So, for example, defining an environment where a scene is going to be played, and in that environment you might have a lot of background props, right? So we would utilize AI to concept it, maybe even make AI models, right, which would spit out 3D assets, and then you can utilize those 3D assets inside the scene. And even if they are imperfect, they kind of get the job done, especially if they don't need the same kind of perfection and fine tuning as the subject matter in that scene. And I mean that's in a perfectly good spot of basically being an AI assisted workflow.
Are you guys maybe you're comfortable naming a tool that you're using or not? Are you guys using custom in-house solutions? Are you experimenting out
We
of the
are,
box?
yeah, we are using custom in-house solutions.
Yep.
So that's part of the things which makes us stand out a little bit. Like we almost always sort of invest in engineering time and like research in spinning things out internally, because then you are not at mercy of a different platform and you can sort of like control your own destiny and fine tune it for your own purpose.
We think that's the only way anybody's going to live through this period. We don't know how anybody's even like sinking their teeth in. Like, this is what we're going to do, and this is the tool we're going to use. It's like, for the week, maybe, it's going to change. So you're given your background with product design and accessibility and thinking about the user experience. I'm wondering how you're seeing AI empower creators that may be underrepresented or unable to have done these types of productions in the past. Do you think we're going to see some high level, totally AI generated works in the next 6 to 12, 18 months? Where do you think we're at now to where we're headed?
I think we probably are 50 to 60% there. Like I do not, I don't think that we probably will be a place in 18 months where we would see anything mainstream that is completely written by AI, generated by AI, and distributed and consumed, right? Like, but we would definitely see large parts of productions being done through AI tools. And, like AI, just because of the nature of it, is not cheap, unlike a lot of other people are thinking, right? So
It
a
is
lot
not
of,
cheap at all. I don't even
yeah,
know how the cheap conversation is happening. Like
correct. So
it's
one of the things there to think about is, and this is something I have talked about often, is when you are looking at a lot of the platforms today who are trying to basically blitz through consumer applications, even including like OpenAI and ChatGPT, right? Like the operating costs of those alone far outweigh the subscription fee you pay to utilize these models, right? But necessarily you are running on a subsidized model, and that's subsidized through venture funding, right? So at some point, you are going to see the cost sort of come down. So it will meet in the middle where the actual costs are going to be. But overall, it's almost like Uber. So once they get to enough monopolized part, you basically see prices tending to go up, right? So that's one of the things. Another thing is that with the tools, you would see rapid concepting evolving deeper into the production life cycle. So they wouldn't be just limited to concepting anymore. You would see, like uh, people utilizing fully synthetic voices for like voice acting, for example, or you would be able to see fully AI generated environments in certain parts of the story, right? And that's how we would see more and more impactful contribution in the main production. But end of the day, you would still see that the people who are going to be working with these tools in tandem are just going to become even better creators.
right.
And like that, they are not going to
All of the old
disappear
skill sets are
because
just as important. Yeah, I mean,
the
just
team is going
editing.
to stay there. Yeah.
So, Tony brought up our CEO here in the chat. He brought up a few weeks ago in one of these spaces that just please and thank yous alone to ChatGPT are costing them millions of dollars a month. Not even requests, just tokens saying please or thank you. And I thought that was hilarious that's where we are. We're spending this VC money on please and thank yous over and over again for people being nice to their AIs, which is hilarious to me. I'm wondering, are you guys, the creators you're employing currently, Are they working still in traditional Hollywood? Are they part of unions? How are you guys working
Yeah,
with
so
those
so right
creators?
now we definitely have worked um, with union and non-union actors. Actors are like talent in general, but major majority part of them are definitely non-union, and that's just like their prerogative.
Are
We
you guys making production decisions along the way of if we're using union or
Yeah,
non-using?
yeah,
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 yeah.
we are. And one of the other things there is that it's a very Hollywood defined concept. Like the moment you end up working with a talent which is overseas, seas, almost all the time they're not part of a union at that time.
That's sad.
Yeah.
So, are you encouraging your in-house creators to use AI, and are they utilizing it in their own production processes? And I'm
Yeah, they are utilizing it in their own space. So, like we don't have like a mandate that, oh, you have to utilize AI for a certain amount of time or
right.
a certain amount of production. So they tinker and play with tools, provide us feedback so that we can build something like unique and custom for them. And the intent there is to create things which naturally fits into their workflow versus them learning net new behavior, because that again comes with a learning curve, right? So
Absolutely. What type of feedback are you hearing from them? Are they loving some of the outputs? Are they finding it good sometimes and bad other times? Or
definitely a mix of, surprise, astonishment, happiness, sometimes anger, right? So it's a happy mix of emotions, but they do find it uh, very efficient in a certain type of tasks, not in everything.
sure. Same,
Yeah.
same with me. Same experience I'm having. So I'm interested to know, what are you guys thinking of Hollywood right now? Being from Hollywood and having so many creators that spent 25 years at Pixar, made Up. Like everybody's seen this person's work. Everybody knows the movie Up. What's your collective energy and maybe just your perspective on where Hollywood is and where media and content are headed in general?
I feel it's definitely at an inflection point. Like again, it's personal opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. I do see that Hollywood fundamentally needs to take more risks versus like same old franchises. So it becomes new and more fresh, right? And we are seeing like pockets of those things happening, like even in the licensing markets and landscape, you can see the affinity towards new IPs which are coming online exclusive on the internet, and how much people are really really interested in doing things with them. And that's something which Hollywood should probably look at, where like they should embrace different types of form factors, they should embrace different kind of methods, to really look past what has been done before and like introduce something new, right? Another piece there, I think, like more concluding, is you today are seeing like pretty rapid shift in the kind of production people are into or what they watch, right? So if you look at YouTube data from last year, YouTube is streamed more on TV than it's streamed
Yeah.
on mobile phones. And YouTube is streamed more than Netflix, right? Or any other competitor combined. So you can see that people really, really crave for sometimes that authentic, non polished kind of content, which comes from YouTube, right? So there is something there to learn. And you can also see from a consumer standpoint how there is a rise of completely new kind of content mediums like reel charts and like drama box and similar kind of applications, which are now like number one entertainment apps, like within United States, other larger markets as well. So a fundamental shift in the kind of content people want to see and watch and consume, which is different from what we have been seeing in like early 2000s too.
Yeah, I love that you bring up YouTube, and it's interesting. YouTube just rolled out what they're calling peak moment ads, so they're watching the duration of views and the most interest of a viewer, and then they're sticking an ad in right before that and charging the most for that ad and saying that it's the most watched ad at the moment. So I'm wondering how you're viewing that of, based on what you just said. It seems like YouTube is dominating and more people continue to go there, and we can all come up with whatever reasons we want or excuses or this is why or this is this. Do you feel like they're just winning and like the ad model is it for now? Cuz like how are people going to leave there? Even if people stopped uploading the YouTube, it's
Right.
not like that content doesn't have evergreen value. So like that model's going to work. How are you viewing that right now as
I would say YouTube is also winning because out of all of the video platforms out there, YouTube has been able to crack it at scale where they are able to do very efficient rev sharing across the board,
yeah.
right? So even though it is ad generated model, you have to understand that an average viewer doesn't care. They're happy, like either paying for YouTube Premium because the vast content library outweighs the premium price, and then they are just happy to consume sometimes for free, right? And they don't mind watching a 20-second ad spot there, right?
Yeah, or
But then
hit mute.
once you do it with like a billion people, those numbers are not so small anymore. And then creators are happy because they are able to see significant numbers come out of that ad revenue, which sustains them, right? Like, which is the point.
Absolutely. I'm interested to know, with your background, how are you viewing emerging markets like India? And like right now, we're Rad TV seeing a huge boom in India. Are you
Mhm.
are you considering that in your product development and your IP rollout, or are
We
you
we
really
definitely, yeah, we definitely think it's going to play a major role. Like eventually, you would see some kind of like peak or saturation in larger, more mature markets, but then you see emerging markets growing much faster than the larger established markets because just net new people coming online, right? But like one of the things we have to think about is that I'm not sure like what your data is showing for RAD, but when they are coming, like these people are coming on board, they have very different motivation to come online in the first
absolutely
place. They have
very
very
different
different,
payment rails, lots of
yeah,
very different
content
everything? Yeah.
patterns. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So those are unique and net new, like like user behaviors you would have to design around.
So you're talking about IPs, and we're talking about AI for the moment. I'm interested to know how you are looking at two things. Are you interested at all? Is Atrium interested at all in IPs that are entering the public domain, or are you really focused on addressing and introducing new IPs to market?
I think we definitely are interested in IPs entering in public domain. Even with that, you would see that IPs entering public domain are ripe for disruption. Like think of an IP like Dracula, right? Like so Dracula is a public domain character. You have so many versions of Dracula, but all of those versions, the moment you introduce a derivative, it doesn't by default go into public domain, right? So a Hotel Transylvania Dracula is owned, that variant is owned by Universal, and a Van Helsing Dracula done by Warner Brothers is
I
Warner
love that
Brothers.
you know exactly. You've already done the research. I love that you already know all this. This is great.
So I think there could be multiple um, sort of commercialization aspects which build on top of these. And see for there, for example, something like AI, advancing in production would help. Imagine you being a Mickey Mouse fan or a Dracula fan, and you go on a place like Reel Charts, right? And it creates a gazillion number of shows using AI for you uh, about Mickey Mouse or about, like Dracula, and you are able to watch all of that in one place, right? So that's where it becomes a completely net new consumer behavior and like fandom behavior, and I think that's probably the world where we are headed.
Are you all looking at or thinking about at Atrium personalized content and putting people in movies and things like that with these types of tools and making
I
it
would say so, but yeah, we are probably still like
right?
not in the near term future, but definitely thinking towards that goal.
You given any thought to just in time content? And I'm wondering if and when AI is capable, if the IPs that Atrium has produced to date, if
Yeah.
you would consider allowing just in time content to be generated, if and when that model were,
I would say
viable.
so. I would say we would. We definitely would want to get ahead of it by doing it internally as much as we can, and then partnering up with larger companies who would probably have the bandwidth to do it, right? But yeah, definitely open to it. What I today don't like about a lot of the AI models fundamentally is they have essentially scraped the internet without consent, right?
That's my next
So
question.
yeah, it's only a matter of time where someone has enough damage done to their IP, and like it becomes the red herring for everybody else, right? So that's generally where I'm thinking is going. It's what's going to happen. You would see a lot of the AI models or AI toolkits becoming more and more sort of permissioned and really only training through like public domain data versus
Do you think that's
like
even like, is it possible to contain, or is it like, is
it's
this out of
not.
the box?
Yeah, it's out of the box, but I do feel that that's where I was mentioning the earlier evolution of AI agents being, is that when they are being trained on a very controlled sort of data set, they probably wouldn't do too many different things, but they would do it that specific job very very well. So think of a perspective where like a Disney or a Pixar, for instance, goes and actually does do training and like
Right.
creates something which is consumer facing and is done through the IP, which is like rightfully property of that media giant, right? What do you think happens when they come out of something like that to the stuff that was not obtained rightfully?
Yeah. I mean, they have the legal team, so it's not like I don't want to doubt these monsters that have been in business for 100 years. Of
Yes.
can they defend their IP? That's I think the biggest thing that most small creators fail to understand through experience is that you can jump up and down and say that's my IP all you want. Most of them do not have the means to defend
Hmm.
their IP, whether they think they do or not. I mean, if you're, I I know some from personal experience. If you are in the UK and have a copyright problem in the states, you're looking at like, and I'm not exaggerating, but minimum $100,000 just to get an attorney to make some phone calls into the states to talk about whatever that needs to happen, because now they're talking about traveling to the states, they're talking about court in the states, they're talking about
Yeah.
back and forth for years. They're
Hmm.
not just going to sink their teeth into that because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm a creator and I had some views and somebody else stole my content. Like, no, no, no. It's got to be millions of dollars on the table before real attorneys are going to get on board to care at all. And it seems like only the big players can defend that content, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I would say that that's where fundamentally you could probably see platforms sort of platformizing for that new reality where you would basically have to provide some kind of like ownership data, and that's where like maybe things like blockchain becomes mainstream all of a sudden, right? Like
Yeah,
where
we joke all the time. What would the blockchain court, the AI court system say? And it would basically say, "Where is your timestamp, human? Where? show me on the chain where the stamp is, and then we can start the conversation." But if you don't have the public timestamp, then
right.
what are you talking about?
Yeah, but you can always think that AI courts can do as much as they want, but like if that still ends up being reliant on like litigation inside an actual court, then you're not really solving anything, right? Like, so it needs to fundamentally also change how like copywriting laws work and like trademarking works and things like that. I'm sure like that we would probably see some of those changes happen. They are just not happening right now. So you are undergoing this very wide chaotic period where everybody is caught off guard with how fast this is moving.
Yeah, I'm caught off guard by. I'm here every day, and we have some people in the space right now from the AI Art Today space. They host a show every weekday at 10 a.m. and we're all like blown away every day. It's just nonstop innovation, nonstop new tools. It's just an incredible time to be alive if you're paying attention and a self starter. There's no better time to be creative and be online. It's amazing. So we got about 15 minutes left, and I won't take you past two. I respect your time, and thank you very much, Supriyo, for joining us. Today we've had Supriyo Roy join us. He's the founder of Atrium Art. You can check the Megatron up there, Jumbotron, as Benny calls it, and see their YouTube channel, the Nouns movie, the first 3 episodes. They have 6 additional episodes coming at some point. I tried to pry it out of him. He wouldn't tell me. And you can watch that ad-free on Rad TV. They have over 130 artists, global roster of artists from Netflix, Marvel, and Pixar that are available to you to bring your ideas to life with their experiences. We've got about 15 minutes left. Supriyo, we usually been doing a rapid fire segment, and
Got
it's
it.
just like 10 questions that are easy to answer. Pretty, they're personal, nothing like deep and intrinsic that you need to worry about. So it's just fast. I'm going to ask some questions and riddle off the answer. If you want to pass, just say pass. No sweat.
Sounds good.
Who is your favorite artist? And I mean fine artist, painter of all time.
Interesting.
Doesn't have to be
Monet.
painter, but Monet. Okay. How about favorite band of all time?
I don't have a favorite band, actually. That's a good question.
Okay. Next question. Favorite movie?
Jurassic Park.
Oh, I love Jurassic Park. Favorite TV show?
Friends.
That's a good answer. Where is the best cuisine in the world?
Oh, in India.
What's your favorite food?
Good question. I would say sushi.
Love that. What is your favorite restaurant?
Huh. Well, a sushi joint, probably.
Anyone stand out? Anyone you would want to name?
No, not really, not really.
Okay,
Like
okay.
yeah, there are too many to pick from. That's why I said
Sure,
sushi.
sure. What is your personal favorite AI tool you have used to date or using right now?
Okay. I would say probably VO for video.
Awesome. How about your favorite creator that you're watching in the world right now? Somebody you're eyeing that's making content.
That's good. Okay. I would say I personally love Natural Habitat, and they are really good. Like biased towards animation, they are a really good animation creator, and I love like just their witty sort of content, which is made for social media, but it's much so much different and like high production quality than you were able to see anywhere else.
Bitcoin price in 2040.
Huh. Well. I don't know. Well, I do think the number keeps going up because the dollar is devalued.
Yeah,
So,
sure. If we're going in US dollar terms, we're going up for sure. So where do you think?
So the Bitcoin, I think my comment to that is going to be one BTC is one BTC.
Ah, I love that. That's great. We've asked this question like 10 times. I don't think I've ever got that. I love that, Supriyo. That is amazing. We got about 10 minutes left. Are any questions? King Tony, do you have any questions? Thank you for showing up today and joining us. Audience members, if you guys have anything you'd like to ask King Supriyo, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Tony.
Hey, this is awesome. This is incredible.
Incredible space. It was a great time, Supriyo.
It sounds like, yeah, you definitely have a great combination of product mind and content mind, and just the ability to kind of digest what's going on in the world, and it's refreshing to hear and very insightful. So, yeah, very much appreciate you being on here and dropping this knowledge. My question I always ask to like to ask people is, ultimately, if there was one tool or something that could make your life better right now, something that you could see that would just save you so much time if you had it in your life. I'm always curious to know what that is. Are you, doing 10 things in a day that you wish could just be automated? Is there that tool that's frustrating you today that you wish somebody would just fix it? I like to think that we are constantly trying to build on people's behalf, and whether that's us building it or just putting the energy out into the world, then, always curious to hear. But yeah.
Got it. Well, my problem there is not related to tool. I would probably say it's more philosophical. Like it would be great if somebody solved the problem of speculation in the industry. That would definitely make my life so much easier. But yeah.
I loved your post, Supriyo. As I was going through, it was a post from Maria.eth, and I'm just going to read it for anybody here. It's Supriyo's. We retweeted it. It's on our timeline. It's on Supriyo's page as well. Social tokens, BitClout, FriendTech, etc. I'm reading a post, everyone. To align incentives, in quotes, between fans and creators, but they get the model wrong. Because once you attach money, the relationship shifts. The problem: following a creator is win-win. Fans get insight, inspiration, entertainment. Creators get attention and audience growth. No pressure, no expectations, just pure fandom. Now you add in money. Suddenly, it's not "I love your work." It's "I've invested in you. Where is my return?" Admiration becomes accountability. And when the price drops, respect turns to resentment. The solution: yes, build markets around creators, but don't monetize the fans. That's the wrong layer. Fans give love, not liquidity. The market should price attention, not affection. How could we remove things when it's all about attention and we're missing 75% of the world on the internet? That's I read that earlier, and I really love that you put that on your timeline, because this is something we think about all the time. And we're watching Zora and Coinbase scream, "Coin everything," and speculate on all this content. The content that you speculate on is the content that you are spending your time on, not necessarily your money. I was watching Joe Rogan podcasts in 2008, 9, 10, and everybody was saying, "Who is Joe Rogan?" And I'm like, "I was just a guy that interviews a bunch of people on the internet, and I like that he talks to people long form, and I get to hear people talk." And that wasn't valued at all. Nobody knew who that was. It was on Justin TV. I'm sure you probably know what that was. But now it's the biggest podcast in the world. And like, isn't that what we're always betting on, is like information asymmetry? Like, how could we eliminate that? I'm really asking, not rhetorical.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
It's worth talking about for sure, and it's interesting that that's where we are, where everybody's looking to extract value, kind of instead of providing value. We've
I,
got.
I
Go
I
ahead.
feel the whole angle of, like, I mean, as Maria rightly pointed out, is our laziness to go for the lowest hanging fruit and go after, like, oh, the fans can be co-owner, because that's where you are forcing speculation on people, right? Like, that's why I mentioned that inherently this is tied to the nature of PvP. There is going to be a winner and there is going to be a loser, right? And when more people lose, you have far more damage you do to your brand, your creatorship, IP, and audience, than you would have the limited upside from that temporary euphoria when number goes up. Your upside is limited, your downside is infinite.
No, I love yeah, it's true. Absolutely, I love that. And you're coming at this from such an awesome perspective, Supriyo. It's as Tony said, it's refreshing to talk to you, to somebody that's really tackling these problems with a passion and a real idea that's not just extraction based. You're really adding value, and it's undeniable. That you guys are providing value here just based on the amount of content you're putting out and the reception. And keep up the great work. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Anything you would like to share with people? Where can people follow you? What's next for Atrium? Anything you want to plug before we wrap up here?
Yeah, just follow the Atrium handle, and if you like what we do, share it with your friends and family, and yeah, spread the word. That's the most helpful thing you can do in helping us succeed.
Absolutely, and we'll be spreading the word far and wide about Atrium Animation. We've got an Atrium Animation channel on Rad TV with the first 3 parts of their Nouns movie. Go check it out. It's pinned at the top of our profile. Their YouTube channel's pinned. The full 30-minute episode is pinned from their X account. Again, Supriyo, it has been wonderful speaking with you today. It's been insightful and fun. I've laughed a ton. You have amazing energy. Grateful to be connected with you. And thank you, King Tony, for setting this up. And Supriyo, thank you so much for your time this Friday. Everybody, thank you for listening. Supriyo, any last words before we shut it off?
No, have a great weekend, I guess.
Tony, anything from you, my king?
No, this is fantastic. Yeah, have a great weekend. Definitely appreciate you being here. This was awesome.
Thank you, Supriyo. Everybody go follow Supriyo. Go check out atrium.art. Type that into your URL and follow everything Atrium's doing. They're working with some of the best creators in the world. Go check out their website. If you want to apply. They're only working with the best. And we have a lot of amazing creators in our community. Go over and check them out, see what they're up to. Bug Supriyo. I definitely recommend following him here on X. He's got a lot of insight and puts a lot of great stuff on the timeline. Supriyo, thank you very much for your time today. This has been NFTV Season 3, Episode 13. My name is Cameron. If anybody's looking to get started at radtv.com, you can do so today for free. You can start monetizing, start selling content right now, distribute to over 6 billion devices with just one upload. Our DMs are open if you have any questions. Again, atrium.art. Follow Supriyo Roy. He is everywhere online. And atrium.art, atrium.art. Go check it out. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thanks again, Supriyo. See you next time, everybody.
Thank you.
We're living in a digital age. Rad TV's here. Turn the page. Creators getting paid from day one. Monetize your content. Let's have some fun. Web3 vibes. We're on the chain. Decentralized. Breaking the reins. Multi-chain support.